So as we've already determined, Seal is a butler now. That's a thing. And through some twisted, convoluted means, this has made Lu get her power back and regain her position among the demons. Just go with it, it's easier that way. A brief 6-month wait is all it took to bring Noblesse to every other server. Like Craziac, this job advancement focuses on Lu, though it does touch on Seal as well, and basically tries to bring them both to the same level. How successful this was is up for debate, but at least the skills and abilities that come with the class are worth talking about. So take a seat, get some popcorn, and let's see what our unicorn-haired Noblesse has to offer. Are you ready for some random chance? Good, because that's what you're gonna get. Aside from a few steps of the quest that require drops from mobs or kills of certain bosses, there's quite a few random drops in this quest. And as we all know, with random drops, you might get it on the first try or never. I'd pin this quest under the average second job status, simply because having ridiculous drop rates is definitely not unique to Noblesse. You do know that people usually cut their hair, right? Right? I mean, not that it looks bad, it's just weird. But honestly, the outfit looks kinda cool. Aside from the weird blue wing thingies, I think it's a pretty neat outfit, and the white is actually quite easy on the eyes compared to the stunning blue of the rest of it. Now she just needs some longer underwear. Like other classes, Noblesse actually only gets 2 combos, and they're both pretty simple, so let's take a look. Dash Switch. This is performed by Seal, and contrary to what the game tells you, this is executed using dash Z or dash X, followed by X, down X, and X again. This move switches to Lu and drops several soul spears from the sky, causing repeated damage. It's similar to Craziac's javelin combo, but it's also unique in its own right. Aimed Cross Cannon. Once Seal is in his Gatling or cannon stance through combos, simply perform up X or down X to do an aimed finishing shot. Aimed cross cannon is quite simple, though I won't go as far as to call it disappointing, since it can certainly be useful. Dash Switch looks cooler than it is useful. While it looks cool and can be a handy little move, its payoff is definitely not spectacular. Spiritual Enhancement Passive. This passive's primary function is to strengthen the Trigger Soul Eruption skill both in damage and size. It also adds up to 6 extra spectral spears based on soul count that seek in on and hit opponents. Noble Presence Passive. This passive increases resistance to all attributes by a significant amount, and also lets you get a buff on any souls gathered through Royal Guard's soul system after sufficient stacking. This buff lasts for quite a while and allows you to increase your magic attack power. Tribute Passive. This passive has 2 main abilities. The first is activated whenever Noblesse harvests a soul, and recovers some of your awakening gauge as well as increasing the buff's duration. Additionally, when receiving any debuff, there's a chance you will lose a gathered soul and the debuff will be completely negated. Nobility Passive. This passive notably decreases any damage taken from special actives by up to 20%, and helps you fill your combination gauge faster by giving you a chance to gain an additional point in your gauge and reducing cooldown. Keep in mind that Spiritual Enhancement and Noble Presence compete, as well as Tribute and Nobility, so you can only get a total 2 of the 4 passives. Level 35 active, Soul Sigil for 45 MP. Once activated, Soul Sigil acts as a buff that fires out little wisps of energy to seek in on and hit opponents. It also casts the buff on fellow party members, letting you double up the damage. Level 45 Special Active, Swift Smash for 120 MP, or Spectral Spear for 100 MP. Swift Smash creates a giant pentagram of hits over a very large radius, dealing damage over a total of 6 strikes and knocking enemies significantly. Spectral Spear is a pretty straightforward move. Literally. It fires a Spectral Spear forward, causing massive damage. Level 50 active, Shadow for 40 MP. This performs a quick strike and then creates a shadow duplicate of you which absorbs damage as well as debuffing enemies that make contact with it by decreasing their magical attack and defense. Level 55 special active, Shadow Bolt or Twilight Judgment, both for 200 MP. Shadow Bolt drops Shadow Bolts from a giant portal in the sky, dealing lots of damage to many enemies below. It has 2 modes. The first leaves it in place, letting it drop spears as you continue attacking. The second lets you gain Super Armor mode and use the arrow keys to move the portal around the stage. Twilight Judgment is a fairly simple but cool looking move that fires like a railgun and deals damage straight forward through a row of enemies. It can also be recast for no MP cost up to 2 additional times. Level 65 Hyperactive, Castle of Abaddon for 300 MP. This Hyperactive creates a giant sigil and fires a barrage of energy wisps and spears forward at enemies. This is essentially Soul Sigil taken up to 11, a sight to behold. To me, there's a few moves here that are just incompatible. For example, if you take Spectral Spear, you don't need Twilight Judgment. But personally, I found Twilight Judgment to be a bit of a waste compared to Spectral Spear anyway. And Swift Smash, while it has a good area of effect and does good damage, personally I find that the fact that it tosses enemies around and knocks them down is just not good. Definitely get Soul Sigil, as it's like the bread and butter of Noblesse, and doubly so in PvE. But Shadow, in my opinion, is better for a PvP environment. PvE is too quick, except for bosses, the enemies just die too fast and it's hard to make the Shadow actually useful for anything. Passives are easy to pick, really. If you have Trigger Soul Eruption from Royal Guard, then go for Spiritual Enhancement. Otherwise it does pretty much nothing for you, so it's better to get Noble Presence. As for Tribute and Nobility, I think Nobility is far more beneficial in PvP for its reduction of special active damage. Tribute charges Awakening more quickly and prevents debuffs, so it's a good passive for PvE. When playing Noblesse, I find myself rarely using her combos. I do use some combos of course, but Noblesse's skill arsenal is just too good to pass up. Combining skills like Spectral Spear and Shadow Bolt is incredibly effective for clearing out both mobs and bosses, and even her actives, like Soul Sigil, are well worth using. Noblesse isn't quite as maneuverable as Dreadlord, but has combos which I find are easier to utilize, and moves like Shadow Bolt and Twilight Judgment definitely make up for this. It is nice to see the Soul system used a bit. Royal Guard and Kiliarch didn't use their systems much, so it's nice to see that Noblesse has evolved Royal Guard's system into something that's at least used in a couple of passives. Personally, I find Noblesse's style to be quite good. It's fun to play, very powerful, and lends itself to lots of cool looking skills that do significant damage and have great tactical advantage. To me, Noblesse feels a little more complete than Dreadlord. Even with the somewhat disappointing combos, Noblesse's great skill versatility is outstanding at creating a playstyle which covers enough situations that you never really have to worry about what to do. It covers a contingency of both PvE and PvP very well, so there's really no class of player that gets left out. The Soul system still feels a little underused, but that's honestly forgivable. I never felt like it was a good addition anyway, so having it take a backseat to everything else is perfectly fine for me. All in all, except for the fact that, like every other Luciel class, it's a bit unfairly overpowered, I see no reason not to choose Noblesse as your Luciel job path. Achievement unlocked! Job path completed! Noblesse is finished! Dreadlord's looking just around the corner, and he's full of brand new surprises for us to review! But until then, feel free to check out some other editorials or Let's Plays on the screen by clicking them. And until next time guys, I'll see you later.